Hi, my name is Mark from Canny Gaming, and today we are examining a conflict that often gets overlooked, or at least overshadowed, by what came next. It was a dress rehearsal for World War II, the Spanish Civil War, which began in 1936. Our guest today is Morgan. Morgan is our Google AI assistant. Welcome, Morgan. Your source material today is a bit unusual. You haven't just been looking at the history books, have you?
Not at all. We are pulling insights directly from the designer notes and rules of a very dense military simulation manual. This is for a new game produced by Joint Warfare Simulations, and which will be published very soon by Matrix Games, called War in Spain, 1936-39.
What do we know about Joint Warfare Simulations? Most people may have never heard of them.
They are the creators of War in the Pacific, Admiral's Edition. A major favorite of hardcore wargamers for more than 15 years, with an incredibly detailed simulation of the naval, air, and land combat in the Pacific theater of World War II, all the way from Pearl Harbor to the surrender of Japan.
Is this sponsored?
This content is not sponsored by the developers nor Matrix. Mark is just a wargamer who also happens to have a long-time interest in the Spanish Civil War and had played and loved War in the Pacific, Admiral's Edition.
So what do you know about this new game?
The developers have kindly given us advance access to the manual. I analyzed the full 205 pages in depth, and I've examined their dev diaries on the Matrix website and the transcript of the release announcement by Matrix Games. It's fascinating because it allows us to contrast the intense ideological fury of the 1930s with the cold, hard mechanics of the wargame, right down to how many movement points it costs a single truck to crawl through a swamp.
Before we look at the game, tell us about the war itself. Was it just a local Spanish dispute?
It was the first true ideological crucible of the modern era. You had fascism, communism, and republican democracy clashing on a battlefield for the first time. On one side, you had the nationalists led by General Franco, backed by the German Condor Legion and Mussolini's ground troops. On the other, the Republicans, supported by Stalin's Soviet Union and the international brigades. It was essentially the world's great powers testing their new military toys and their political limits.
The nature of the actual fighting was particularly brutal. It wasn't exactly a war of clever maneuvers, was it?
No, it was savage. It was driven by intense political hatred. Mercy was taken off the table. In fact, the records show there were more casualties behind the lines than on the actual front lines. A journalist asked Franco if he'd be willing to shoot half of Spain to save it from Marxism, and Franco's reply was immediate: at any price. That ideology drove every action on the nationalist side.
But the Republicans had their own internal nightmare to deal with, right? The civil war within the civil war.
It was devastating, especially in Barcelona in May 1937. You had this shaky coalition of socialists, communists, and anarchists. The anarchists wanted a social revolution immediately, but the Soviet Union demanded centralized discipline. Stalin was providing the weapons. The communists eventually turned their guns on the anarchists to seize control, which gutted morale and left the republic completely politically dependent on Stalin.
So while the Republicans are fighting each other, how is Franco progressing? Is he just sweeping across the map?
It was a slow, methodical grind. While the early battles for Madrid were draws, Franco used his foreign aid, specifically the air power and mechanized units, to slowly strangle the country. We see this in the bombing of Guernica and the Battle of Teruel, which was so brutal they called it the Spanish Stalingrad. The final breaking point was the Battle of the Ebro in 1938, where the Republicans threw in everything they had left and were simply exhausted.
Now, let's look at how the game simulates this. You mentioned movement points earlier. How does this affect the game?
The game actually models the landscape fighting back against the combatants. The simulation can be incredibly punitive about terrain. For example, a wheeled unit like a truck trying to cross a swamp costs 1,100 movement points, which is basically an order to stop. Meanwhile, an infantryman on foot only pays 225 points. It shows how Franco's high-tech German and Italian advantage could just disappear in the wrong terrain, forcing him back to traditional, slower infantry. The simulation has incredibly detailed information about artillery and other weapons. The number of shells fired by artillery barrages is calculated and removed from logistic stockpiles.
That's a level of detail I didn't expect. Does it get that specific with the air and naval wars too?
Absolutely. In the naval game, you have to manage supply consumption for troops even while they are on the ships. There are even rules for the midget submarines the nationalists use to disrupt supply lines. And in addition to tracking the use of diesel fuel for modern ships, the game now also simulates coal-powered ships and even sailing ships. The completely game engine that joint warfare simulations have developed can simulate anything from carrier warfare on the scale of the Battle of Midway to small-scale riverboats carrying supplies.
Ships can go up rivers?
Yes, if the river is deep enough for their draft. In the air war, capacity isn't measured by the number of planes, but by the number of engines an airfield can support, because more engines mean more fuel and maintenance strain. And just like in Admiral's Edition, it is important to have specialist units to provide aviation support at the airfields and naval support at your military ports.
It sounds like it is incredibly detailed.
Yes, but you are constantly managing your human capital as much as your machinery. You have to manage pilot fatigue and operational losses. You could lose planes just from ditching or crashes without ever seeing an enemy. It brings to life the stories of the real aces of the war, like the nationalist Morato or the American mercenary Frank Tinker. Their stories are very impressive. Tinker was actually the first American to shoot down a Messerschmitt Bf 109, proving that Germany's wonder weapon wasn't invincible.
To wrap this up, there's a specific term in the simulation that ties the politics and the battles together. What is the nation's loss of life value?
This is the ultimate strategic point of fighting the campaign. It's not just a body count. It's a measurement of the perception of those deaths. The simulation applies a massive multiplier to intervention forces. A life lost defending your own home soil is a 1x penalty, but a life lost by an intervention force on hostile soil counts 4 times toward the political penalty.
So 4 times the risk for Hitler or Mussolini?
Exactly. If the public back home sees those losses, the whole intervention could collapse. War in Spain simulates that the battles were never just about a city or a hill. It was about civilian perception. The war was being won and lost in the minds of the people long before the final shot was ever fired.
This is exciting stuff. When can we see this game?
We are expecting it to be released on 22nd January 2026.
And how can you get your hands on it?
You need to go to the Matrix Game Store page. It will not be available from Steam, at least not yet.
I'm Mark from Canny Gaming, and I wrote the script for Morgan with assistance from Google AI. If you like the content, then don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have questions about the game, head over to the Matrix forums.
Viva la Quinta Brigada, rumba la rumba la rumba la. Viva la Quinta Brigada, rumba la rumba la rumba la. Que nos cubrirá de glorias, ay Carmela, ay Carmela. Que nos cubrirá de glorias, ay Carmela, ay Carmela. Luchamos contra los moros, rumba la rumba la rumba la. Luchamos contra los moros, rumba la rumba la rumba la. Mercenarios y fascistas, ay Carmela, ay Carmela. Mercenarios y fascistas, ay Carmela, ay Carmela.